check.
Level check, sound, level check, sound check, level check. 10 years, unbelievable. 58 then, 68 now. I was 197 pounds then, I'm 182 pounds now. What does that tell you? Nate and I started this channel 10 years ago, and I can look you right in the eye and tell you it has been simultaneously the most challenging and the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. So I think what I want to do right now is just pull back the curtain on Essential Craftsman and kind of let you see what goes on, what's been going on, and maybe a little bit about what it's like right now, including the story of how this channel started, including what I've learned about what it means to be a professional YouTuber. How strange that even sounds, a professional YouTuber. And then answer a few of the questions, because we invited you guys to ask some questions in the comments and on Facebook, and there have been some recurring questions. We're going to answer those, including, hopefully by the end of this, I will have an answer for you on the big question, which is, if I knew then what I know now, would I do this again? So the way this started was about Thanksgiving of 2015, probably. I was talking to Nate. Nate's my oldest son. He's been the partner on here. He's a silent partner now. He's been drawn off into some other business ventures. But we were talking on the phone. He said, "Dad, when I come up at Christmas, I think we ought to make a video in the shop." Really? What do you think? Well, he said, "You know, YouTube, you've seen YouTube down at my place a couple times." And I said, "Yeah, that's where the funny cat videos, and then what, fail videos?" Yeah. He said, "I think we ought to make a couple videos in your shop and post them on YouTube to let people know about your blacksmithing. Kind of expand awareness so maybe you can sell some more swords and some of the house jewelry, architectural ironwork that Cy Swan and I had been making for about, I guess, 10 or 12 years before that. Create a market. And besides, people like to watch it." And I said, "Well, okay. I mean, if you think, really?" I just didn't get it at all. But Nate had been watching YouTube a lot, and I think, in fact, I'm sure he had identified YouTube as the lowest barrier to entry into the internet marketing world and maybe the internet economy itself somehow. So Nate and his family came up for Christmas, and one night we came out here in the shop, and we decided, since I was deeply, passionately involved with blacksmithing then, as compared to YouTube, which has trumped all of that, but we decided to make a video about the most interesting thing in my shop, which was ostensibly the power hammer, my 200-pound Chambersburg General Utility hammer. And so Nate got out his iPhone, and we filmed a little video about the power hammer. Okay, and we posted it. And then maybe he filmed one more on that trip. I guess I don't quite remember. But pretty soon, that was uploaded in January of 2016. And through the spring, he would get on a plane. He was living in Mesa at the time. At the Gateway Airport, he'd get on an Allegiant flight and hop up here for a weekend, a 3-day weekend. And we would film 2 or 3 videos. And he would go back and he would edit. And he would post them and we would watch it. And it was curious. But they were blacksmithing videos. There was my monster forge, how to texture bolt heads. I don't remember the other ones off the top of my head, and then comes July. And I think his whole family came up again because it's hot in Mesa in July, and it's nice in Roseburg in July. And he came up, and I had been thinking about what I would make in my blacksmith shop, and I thought, well, maybe it was Nate's idea, I don't remember, about the blacksmith's anvil. What is an anvil? What is a blacksmith's anvil, and the history, and how did it develop, and why did Wile E. Coyote decide to use anvils in his pursuit of the Roadrunner, and where did that shape come? So anyhow, we did a video called The Blacksmith's Anvil. And it was the first video we did that you might say went viral. We uploaded it Saturday morning, and by Monday morning it had 112,000 views, but more importantly, we had gone from 300 subscribers after 6 months to 5,000 subscribers. And I just have to confess that all weekend, I was just like a teenage girl walking down Main Street looking at her reflection in the storefront. I couldn't get away from the comments and the people watching it, and the numbers kept scrolling up. And man, it was exciting. And when that flattened out, and that video's got about 550,000 views now, 10 years later. I mean, it got 120 in the first 2 days, and then, the rest over the next 10 years. Because the algorithm, we didn't know then, but we know now, is a finicky and demanding mistress. That's what the algorithm is. But it began to change our calculation. And so from July on through the fall, he began to come up twice a month. And we were posting these videos, and it began to dawn on us that maybe there was something more going on than we thought. I went down to Mesa, and I built a garden shed, an HOA-compliant little garden shed for my other son, Adam, who lived down there. And Nate filmed that on his iPhone. And we did a couple of sort of videos inside of that, how to rig up a tool belt for framing. And I don't know, maybe we squeezed 3 videos out of that 2-day garden shed project. And man, that one took off. In fact, that took off to the point that it looked like right away that maybe my blacksmithing channel was going to have to become a carpentry and construction channel. Not least of all because there was, on the surface of it, more opportunity for content. So it was January of 2017, 1 year after we started, that Nate and I in a phone call said, okay, we were now up to, we were up to 17,000 subscribers in a year. And we hadn't monetized the channel. That is, we had not given YouTube permission to put advertisements in our videos. We were just posting them, and that was it. Well, the algorithm does not like it if it can't put advertisements in your videos. And we were aware that once you monetized, you would probably begin to grow a little faster. So we did it. We monetized, and we started putting out a few more videos. But at the same time that we monetized, we had a discussion and said, look, should we become more serious about this? Should we think of this less as a marketing platform for blacksmithing sales and more of a shot at the internet economy? And I remember telling Nate, well, Nate was in Phoenix. He'd been flipping houses, and the real estate crash of 2008, 2009, 2010 was kind of over, and real estate wasn't on sale anymore. And he had several properties. He really did good at that. I'm proud of him. But that was kind of tapering out, and he was curious, and I was a small contractor here, and I said, well, I'm game to try this, son. I can tread water for 6 months. I can give this a 6-month trial, and if it looks like it's going to get traction, we'll pursue it, and if it doesn't, no harm, no foul. So that was pretty much the extent of our forward planning. We'll try it for 6 months. And let me tell you, those of you who are thinking about YouTube as a viable niche, most YouTube channels burn out between 3 and 7 years. Successful YouTube channels crater between 3 and 7 years because it's hard. We'll talk about that some more. But we decided to try it, and so we did, with an emphasis on construction and blacksmithing and construction. We got the bright idea of doing a blacksmithing course. So we videoed that, and that had Nate coming up here 3 times a month to film that. That was hard. He was finishing a big project down there, and I was trying to develop the courses. We did that. And as we were coming out of developing that blacksmithing course, he was up here and we were talking about the viability of carpentry content. And I remember saying to him, I'm not going to live long enough to show all of the carpentry tricks and tips that I've learned over the last 40 years inside of the little remodels and additions that I was doing, bathrooms and kitchen and, add a wing to a house. I'm not going to live long enough to show everything that I've learned inside of my normal construction flow. And I think we both said out loud at the same time, we've got to build a house. We had to build a house. And we looked at each other and we realized, yeah, that's right. And that's how the Spec House series was born. And let me tell you this, before I dive into that any further, it was simultaneously, no, I'm just going to say it was the hardest darn thing I've ever done in my life. Because however hard it is to build a house on an adverse lot, a little steep, constrained lot, it's way harder to do it with a camera running. So looking back, the decision to build that spec house was the reason that the channel exists today. And it was almost the reason that the channel crumbled. Because AdSense revenue is the first easiest compensation that you can get with a YouTube channel. We've learned you have to develop every revenue stream that you can in order to make it, because it's like pushing a train. Man, you got to lean into it for a long time before anything starts to move. And Nate was pretty well self-sufficient, and I was not in terrible shape. But as the spec house began to get traction, we got about 180 videos out of that, I think. And we discovered and thought about and decided to set up a Patreon account. And our friends generously began to participate. And boy, did that help. It helped so much with enough cash flow to keep us showing up. The spec house was hard because we built it out of pocket. We didn't generate a construction loan. That would have sunk the ship because it took so long. Because my mom went into hospice and I was providing hospice care for her, and so the project stalled for a year, but we kept dribbling out content enough that the algorithm kept promoting us and the channel kept growing. But it didn't match my construction income for a long time. But the spec house kept us on it, because once you've broken ground on a house, you have to finish. However hard it was for me to be in front of the camera teaching and building and building and teaching, and having to change the subcontractor schedule because you could only have one in at a time in order to film them, because what we were actually doing was creating a film studio as the house came up, right? So the schedule was long, and a bank loan would never have hung with us that long, and so it was just all sorts of stresses and strains, but the channel began to get traction. Patreon began to be something. AdSense began to grow. I remember the first time, way back when, AdSense sent us a check for $17, and Kelly and I looked at each other and thought, what does this mean? What does this even mean? Well, it meant that it gradually grew. But I will tell you, for those of you who are thinking that YouTube is a career, why don't you set your sights on being the quarterback in the winning Super Bowl game? Because you've got about the same likelihood. There are millions and millions and millions of YouTube channels. And man, it's hard to get recognized. It's hard. And then once you get recognized, it's hard to keep it up. All right, so a little more about where does the money come from to continue to do this? Well, like I mentioned, you got to develop every possible stream that you can. And Nate had, I think, the really great idea from the beginning that I don't think we want to veer into sponsorships too much, because you're always chasing the next sponsorship deal. Now, we've done a few, but mostly around building supplies, building materials in our projects that we have used before and can look at the camera and say, yeah, we like them. The blacksmith course that Nate and I made did pretty good. We sold, I don't know, quite a few copies of that, and that helped. And these things kind of added up to help us coast forward building that house until the AdSense revenue and the Patreon income became enough. So the spec house was built. Although what was really built was the channel, because we had about 1 million subscribers by the time we got to the end of the spec house. And that is almost critical mass. Now, it sounds like a lot, but the subscriber number is a fantasy number. It doesn't mean much, because if you look at our view count, our average video now gets 80 or 100,000 views in a week. But what happened to the 1.8 million subscribers? The fact is, most people just think of subscribing as checking a box or sort of a placeholder, and then rarely get back. It is the viewers who are interested in promoting what we're doing that carry us along. And I just can't thank you enough for that. Now we realized that we had to make that a more serious, life-sustaining or career-sustaining dynamic when we started the Essential Craftsman Academy, and it grew to the point that it's pretty good. I mean, I wish there were more people at Shop Talk. You know, we get 40, 60, 80, 100 people at Shop Talk twice a month. I wish there were more, because in a very real way, the give and take has created friendship dynamic. And I learn, and it's terrific. There are experts in so many fields there, but that didn't come till later, and it was Nate's idea. But when the spec house was done, Nate began to feel like he had to do something different, because YouTube is not a gold mine for most of us. It's just a living. It's just a living. And the channel had been supporting 2 families, plus Brooke, who was our editor. And so, yeah, it was a living. But Nate had to add something to his entrepreneurial nature. And so he kind of stepped away, became a silent partner, handling IT, handling a lot of other things that just have to be handled. And Brady Winder, he doesn't like it when I call him Brady Winder. But that's what Siri says, calling Brady Winder. But we had met Brady years before, just sort of incidental, and then I ran across him in Lowe's right when the spec house had all of us exhausted. Let me drill down on that. It almost killed me. I was dealing with sleep apnea, I was dealing with exhaustion, I was dealing with imposter syndrome, and by that I mean there's nothing like turning on a camera to make you second guess whether or not you know anything. It's the difference between singing in the shower and singing in the Super Bowl. I mean, one is fun and one is not. So at the end of that, Nate and I were both exhausted. Nate had been staring through a camera at his dad for 3 years and then going home and editing till 3 o'clock in the morning for, week in and week out. And we were tired, but we made it through that. And then I think divine providence put me back in contact with Brady. He needed a little help finishing a house he was building. What a project that was. So I got to jump in on that a little bit, and then one thing led to another, and he has camera skills, and so now he's our video producer. And he's become a real key part of the program, and Brooke continues to move things forward, and so we have a team. We have 4 of us, Nate, Brooke, Brady, myself, and Kelly, my wife. She handles tons of admin stuff you wouldn't believe. And so please forgive us if you write to us wanting to cancel your Academy subscription, or if we don't respond as quickly as we should. Thank you for your forbearance. I'll tell you that merch is not a way to make, at least for us, we haven't really figured out merch. Now, I like selling my hammers, my form setter hammers. Got a patent on that. I've already bragged about that till you're sick of hearing about it. Andrew Larson still makes them. He's part of the team. We've sold almost 1,000 of them. It's been great. Kelly loves to ship those things. And so it is a team, but I will tell you, there's a reason at the end of a movie that you have about 2 minutes of credits. 150 people roll by there that had part of making that movie. And the credits at the end of an Essential Craftsman video are about that long. They're short, and it's hard. But enough of that. Let's talk about what makes this fulfilling and why I've been able to stick with this now for 10 years. All right, so what makes it rewarding? Let's start with why have I not quit? There have been plenty of times when I have thought, I don't think I can do this anymore. I out of ideas, but the ideas come. I mean, Brady and Kelly and my kids and your questions and your comments all lead to new content ideas. There are all kinds of wonderful things to build. The Essential Craftsman Build-Off, you might check that out. But the reason that I've been able to continue to do this is largely, there's 2. When it was just getting traction, Ben and Amanda and their family, 5 kids, 5 wonderful kids. They lived up in Corvallis, 2 hours north, in a nice little neighborhood. And Aaron, their 3rd child, 2nd son, had been visiting at the Opas. The Opas were next door neighbors. Fantastic. You know, just the neighbor relationship we all wish we had, and some of us do have. And Aaron was over there with his counterpart and their lineup of children, and he was coming back, and Mr. Opa was sitting at a computer monitor watching an Essential Craftsman video. And Aaron walked by and said over his shoulder, "That's my grandpa." And Mr. Opa looked around and said, "What? No, it's not." "Yeah, that's my grandpa." And out he went. Mr. Opa picked up the phone and called Amanda. "Amanda, Aaron just said that this video, the Essential Craftsman, is his grandpa. Is that?" "Yeah, that's my dad. That's my dad." So the thing that has made this most worthwhile for me is the entree it has given me into the real core of my grandchildren. Asa, Aaron's little brother, who at the time was 4. 4? I don't know. Would go up to his mom and say, "Can I watch a Papa movie?" Holy smokes, when I heard that, I thought, that's it, I can never quit. I can never quit. And so, as I make these videos, and the ideas come, and we build these things, I'm talking to my kids and my grandkids, and my great-grandkids, and my great-great-grandkids. What a blessing that is, that they will be able to hear my voice. And in many cases hear what I really think. So that's item 1. It's curious though, because my kids, I have 4 wonderful kids, and I imagine that in my imagination, they've had to push back just a little bit, because you can only stand just so much of your dad being put up on some kind of a pedestal. It's frankly a little nauseating, right, for them. Now they're proud of me, and we do great, but the real connection is with my grandkids. All right, but the secondary thing, you don't have to read many of the comments on this channel before you run across people, young men mostly, saying, "Man, I wish I would have had a dad," or "You remind me of my granddad," or "I was watching you and I remembered something my granddad told me that I had forgotten." Thank you for provoking that memory. Or, "Are you adopting?" Or, "Since I've been watching your videos, I became a carpenter, and then I became a foreman, and now I'm a job superintendent, and I got a raise, and I want to be a better dad, and I want to be a better husband." And I read those things, and they make me weep sometimes. And nobody deserves as many friends as I have now. Nobody deserves it. I don't deserve it. But man, I've met a lot of people, and it's exhausting, and it's wonderful, and it makes me realize over and over again, I feel like God's had his hand in this. It seems clear to me. And maybe it's just because he's got a sense of humor, I don't know. I mean, if you want to hear him laugh, just tell him your plans, right? But this didn't happen because of my plan. So anyhow, the fulfillment of friendship and acquaintance and the opportunity to mentor. And then the third reason is, man, do I learn a lot from your comments. You've seen me post videos about things that I do, and then I read the comments and I see where I was messing up. I was messing up. And my skill set improves because of the comments that you post. I couldn't even begin to create the list of the things that I've learned, and the methods that I have are better now because of what I've learned from your comments. All right, so before I start talking about the struggle and why all the YouTubers quit, the fourth thing that brings me fulfillment and keeps me showing up is the opportunity that gives me to shine some light on the friends and subcontractors and craftsmen and vendors, the people that have kept my family alive during the 30 years that I've been a builder here in Roseburg and in Las Vegas and in other places. It's a blessing to be able to point out to the world that there are some wonderful people in construction, and I have been able to interact with more than my share. All right, the difficulty. So I'm reminded of a quote, and it certainly applies to YouTubing, but the quote is this: if you want to know the pleasures of power, ask someone who seeks it. And if you want to know the pains of power, ask someone who has it. Well, everyone thinks that it would be great to be a YouTuber, right? Every darn high school kid in the country wants to grow up and be a pro YouTuber. Well, let me tell you what. To begin with, the first thing I'll mention is that the algorithm is an iron mistress. The algorithm wants what she wants. And if you don't provide it, she drops you like a hot rock. You can pour your heart and soul into a video. You can take weeks to do the job and film it and edit it and break your camera and get a new camera and save the SD card and splice it together and do the voiceover and post it, and it flops because the algorithm thinks you got out of your lane. And it's not what the algorithm wants you to bring to market. The algorithm, doggone it, wants people to watch the advertisements that are posted on your videos. If you don't post regularly, she forgets you. And the progress you made is hard to spin back up. So the first downside to YouTube is if you think you're working for yourself, you're kidding yourself. You work for the algorithm. The next thing that makes this hard and painful is a term that maybe you've heard because it's part of popular cultural parlance now, right? It's imposter syndrome. It's the idea that you are presenting yourself as knowing something when in your heart you know you don't. Well, it is real. And sometimes you just have to muscle up and just push through it. And then the magic of video editing makes anybody look good. Can I admit that? But it's still hard because if you make things, if you're a craftsman, if you're a contractor, if you're a builder, if you're an artist, if you're fill in the blank, if you do things, heck, I don't know, maybe if you're a programmer, there's a zen that can be in the shop. I assume there's a zen that can happen at a keyboard where everything is just happening. And the piece that hit the ground as an offcut 4 minutes ago is exactly the piece you need right now. And you remember exactly where you put that tool, and there's a zen. It's a flow, right? A camera sucks that out of the shop. So that when you're doing what you used to do for love or for profit, and you get lost in the process, now you are continually spurred by the camera. Oh, the camera. How's the camera angle? Did that camera just beep at me? Did I lose that? Did I say that right? Did I misspeak? So that is a cost that I could not anticipate when I thought, yeah, I'll start doing these things for YouTube. The fact that the pleasure in the process is seriously compromised. If you've listened to me any period of time at all, you know that I am convinced that God is at work in our lives, in the world, that I'm convinced that God is the creator, that intelligent design is the only explanation for existence. I'm convinced, and I have evidence that is enough for me. I've had interactions that have made me, I would say, profoundly religious. And I tell you this because in the context of religious persons, folks for whom religion and an understanding that God is real is important, there is always held out as the thing to be avoided at all costs, worshiping an idol. And idols can be any number of things. Idols can be anything. An idol is that which takes your first allegiance. An idol is that which occupies your thought stream. An idol is that which dictates your decisions instead of God. And I can tell you that it makes me shiver when I realize what an idol YouTube has become in my life. It is a good old-fashioned social media addiction on steroids because it's also my business. And it's also my platform for teaching things that are worthwhile. And it's also where I interact with friends and new friends and people who have questions and people who are bringing suggestions and questions and objections and troll comments to what it is that I'm doing. And It occupies front and center in my brain and in my heart. And I don't like it. And I fight it, mostly unsuccessfully. So this might be one of the last things about why YouTube is harder than you think. And that is that it's hard to remain authentic. Authentic means doing what you like and what you're good at and what you came to the party to do. It's hard to remain real. And one of the reasons that I don't have too much trouble with that is because of Nate's original idea, let's kind of stay away from sponsorships. Well, the fact is that AdSense revenue, the money they pay you for the ads, usually is just not enough. It's just not enough, especially if there's a partnership, if you have help. AdSense, it's something. Sometimes it's pretty good if you get some big videos, but it's usually not enough. And so people go to sponsorships. And I don't think I'm exaggerating if I say I get 100 emails a week wanting me to sponsor this, let's collaborate, let's do something great together. And that's where you lose your authenticity. Now, you know that I've done some collaborations. I've got a beautiful saw in there that they sent to me free of charge. And boy, do I appreciate it, because it's a Cadillac tool and I can look you in the eye and tell you that and remain authentic. But when you go down the rabbit trail of, gosh, I'm going to go broke, and I quit my previous job, I've had people call me, text me, email, call me, because my videos made them want to be a carpenter so bad they quit one guy called because he had quit his physical therapist job to become a builder contractor. I couldn't believe it. You what? Can you go back? Well, this was during COVID. But I mentioned that because we all require a certain amount of money just to stay alive. And the money that you can make with sponsorships is what costs you your authenticity. And so I'm thankful that Nate recognized early that, we better be careful with that drug. We better be careful with that drug. And the only reason we've been able to do that is because of your generosity with Patreon, DonorBox, and the Essential Craftsman Academy. It felt like that was a legitimate and authentic way. What it was, it changed the sponsors from XYZ tool manufacturer to all you folks who are chipping in a few dollars every month. It spread out the sponsorship paradigm to where I could continue to do what my life consists of, mostly, but none of that has been easy. But it's been easier because of the way you guys have stepped up. And some number of you have figured out that the best way to do that is by being part of the Academy. So I'll answer your questions in just a second, but let me tell you a couple of the fun things, because I don't want this to sound like a pity me. Nobody should pity me. And who could pity me? I'm the most blessed of all men. But the number of friends is a blessing. The number of new things I get to learn is a blessing. I've been invited to places and shops, and I've seen manufacturing processes that I would never have seen. I go into Lowe's and people say, hey, do you make, yes, I make videos. The most engaging moment of being recognized, I'll share with you, it was crazy. Kelly and I flew from here to Maine to speak at Northern Maine Community College. They're a tech school back there, and I went back to speak to their incoming freshmen. It was fantastic. We flew from Eugene to Seattle to Minneapolis to Boston. And in Eugene, somebody came up, hey, yeah, I got a channel. And in Seattle, somebody came up, hey, I got a channel. Nice to meet you. What do you do? And nobody in Minneapolis. And I got to Boston, and I was walking down the concourse. My wife and I were walking along, and I was wearing my uniform, and I hear a voice behind me. Wait a minute. Have you got a YouTube channel? Well, there was a guy behind me. He was a pastor of a church. He was walking down the concourse, looking at his phone, watching our most recent upload. And he looked up, and here I am walking in front of him. I can't tell you what that's like. It's disconcerting, people waving at you on the freeway. But on the other hand, you find out, man, there are a lot of people on this planet that if we lived closer to each other, we would have already been friends. And that's a blessing that I never anticipated, that I don't deserve, and that I will always be thankful that I've received. All right, so the first question is, it was a question about my upbringing. What was my upbringing? Where did I come from? Right here in Roseburg, born here in 1958, raised by a dad who worked in the woods and in a lumber mill, and by a mom who taught piano, and they both worked so hard. And if you want more of the details, you can watch A Tradesman's Life Perspective at 65. I go into detail on that. But it was a country upbringing, saturated with reading and work and livestock and music and fishing, and I'm so grateful for it. But you can watch that video and you'll get, and prayer and Bible stories, all those things. I was so lucky in that regard. The next question, it's a big one. How has YouTube changed your personal life? And I will say, in more ways than I'm comfortable with, and in a lot of ways that I'm thankful for. How's that for ambiguity? I've already mentioned it has changed my screen time. Boom. It has changed it's icky to say this, but because of this little celebrity thing, which is all imaginary. I tell the people that come to my shop and they walk in here, I ask them, do you remember the story of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz? Well, yes. Well, Dorothy and the lion and the scarecrow and the Tin Man, they've got these big problems and they're in strange country and they're walking down this yellow brick road and nothing stops them and they have to overcome challenges because they want to talk to the wizard. And they get to Oz and they find his palace, but they can't find him. And they wander around, and when they finally find the wizard who's going to solve their problems, they find this stumpy, little, semi-handicapped, grumpy, irritable charlatan who's working levers and pulling switches and billowing clouds of smoke to preserve his image. And they realized that they had to solve their own problems. And I tell the people who visit my shop, you've just wrecked the channel for yourself because you've met me. And so it's a little bit weird that in my personal life, I get way more respect from people now because I have a YouTube channel, and there's no reason for it, except that social media has inflated our opinions of influencers. So that's a two-edged sword. I mean, it's flattering to my ego, and it's hard on my privacy, and it's changed my personal life, and I try to not let it. Kelly is such a wonderful counterweight to that. Scott, knock it off. Don't you let those comments wreck you. Thank you. I have 2 or 3 friends, Cy Swan being one, who have wisdom and experience. And when it started taking off, I went up to each of them, and in a private conversation, I said, I'm handing you a metaphorical hat pin. It's a long, straight pin that people used to use to fasten their hats to their hair. And I tell them, if you see my balloon getting swelled up too tight, I want you to pop it, will you? Well, I check with them once in a while, and I'm doing my best, but it has changed my personal life for no good reason. What have I learned from my audience? So much. So much that is practical. I still haven't changed the cotter pins on the new hooks that I put on the chains, on my rigging chain, on my tying down my excavator video. The first thing I did was cut some long chains in half and put new grab hooks on there. And you guys pointed out, wait, run those pins through the other way so that the cotter pin is outside of the friction point of where the chain is getting a hold of the other chain. Brilliant. There have been dozens and dozens and dozens of those practical little trade tips and suggestions and secrets that I pick up out of the comments, just like you do. And more than that, I have learned that I have had confirmed something that we all have reason to think about and suspect, and that is that the epidemic of fatherlessness has caused real problems. That there are heartbroken young men out there, and in some cases resentful young men, that they didn't have a dad. That they did not have a dad. I've learned that in an unforgettable way. I've learned how much we all revere our grandfathers, most of us. And I have learned that there are so many smart people. There are comments that come that are so well written, so packed with information. Some of it's criticism, some of it's commendation, some of it is story and life history. We're surrounded by brilliant people. Those are a few of the things I've learned. Okay, now here is the question that I don't know how to answer this, but I'm going to try. Which has brought you more joy or satisfaction? Woodworking, YouTube, or religion? And I'm going to say work, YouTube, or religion. Well, YouTube is the latecomer to that equation. The real answer as to what has brought me the most joy and satisfaction in my life is family. Actually, is God, family, and work. God, family, and work. Mix up the order if you want. It's so integral. It is so interconnected. I can't really parse that out, because family is a gift from God, and work, in the story of Adam and Eve, when in the sweat of thy brow shalt thou eat thy bread all the days of my life, that was not a curse. That was a lifeline. That was a life preserver. The wonderful beneficial effects for a human of working. So I don't know how to parse those. I don't know how to split those out, but it's a great question. But YouTube is not anywhere near the same magnitude of a joy promoter or a fulfillment promoter, satisfaction promoter, as one's relationship with the cosmos and one's relationship with the people that are entrusted to him and one's relationship with work. But the satisfaction that comes from YouTube is not negligible. And then the last question, after 10 years, would I do it again? That's not an effortless question for me to answer. In a lot of ways, I would say, actually, no. The simpler life was in a lot of ways better. But then if I think carefully about the fact that the opportunity to use a skill set that we are given is a blessing. And YouTube, in a curious way, has given me an opportunity to use more of my skill set than I could have used in any other way. Had I known that then, I would have probably said, okay, I got a duty. That's silly. That's silly. But the dangling carrot of money, the dangling carrot of increasing circle, and the big realized dangling carrot of leaving a legacy for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren and a way for them to know me fairly deeply, would force me then to say, yes, I can tread water for 6 months, Nate. Let's try it. I think knowing then what I know now, I would, on balance, do it again, but I would not have made the decision in a day or an afternoon. But just to wrap this up, I've quoted from a Robert Frost poem 2 or 3 times over the last 10 years. 2 Tramps in Mud Time, and the last stanza, I think is a complete answer to that question. And it goes like this. But yield who will to their separation, my object in living is to unite my avocation and my vocation, as my 2 eyes make one in sight. Only where love and need are one, and the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and the future's sakes. Yep. I think that's it. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.